Hey, already welcome sports fans. It's time for another edition of NFL Football Talk. This is an Inside Sports production. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. So let's go ahead and get right into it. We're all the way up to Week 8. Records being set, dreams being crushed, champions falling. Everything is happening now, so let's get into it. I don't do this show alone. As you know, I bring you the best, and when you want to bring the best, you got to work with the best. So none other than Chris Lardieri. I urge everyone to follow him on Twitter at Chris L Sports. Without any further ado, here he is, the main man. Chris, what's happening?
Charles, fantastic as always. I appreciate it. I hope you've been getting the checks I send on a regular basis. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, you know what? Before we get into it, I mean, we got Peyton Manning. Let's go ahead and give the props where they're due here. Peyton Manning, now the all-time leader in career TD passes, threw his 509th touchdown against San Francisco, which was a big win for the Denver Broncos. And just for everybody, in case you missed it or in case you want to etch this in your brain, the answer to the trivia question: San Francisco and Demaryius Thomas.
Absolutely, and I wasn't quite sure what you're talking about. I hadn't heard anything about Peyton Manning or a record. I don't know about you. It wasn't on TV much. But yeah, I digress. But yeah, props to him, and naturally, our friends at the Four Letter Network in Connecticut already, having little polls and debates about who could potentially break it next. Would it be Andrew Luck? Would it be Aaron Rodgers, etc.? So, American society, 21st century, we're already looking to see who will break it, and the ink's not even dry on the record, and the ball hasn't arrived in the trophy case in camp.
Yeah, I know. And then how about the other one? And, this is going from lifetime achievement to pretty good achievement just for this season. That is DeMarco Murray, first running back ever, or actually first player ever, you could say, to open the season with 7 straight 100-plus yard rushing performances. Dallas Cowboys are rolling, sitting at, sitting at 6-1 now? And,
yes.
Hey, what do you think about those Cowboys anyways? It's hard to buy in, I know, but as long as the DeMarco train keeps running, they keep going.
Absolutely, and a couple things are converging here. One, the defense, which is much maligned, as you and I have piled on them over the past few years.
Right.
Really playing well with Rolando McClain getting off the scrap heap, a busted draft pick by the Raiders, and had a cup of coffee with the Ravens, and was in Alabama, and Jason Garrett was there, I believe, visiting the school, and ran into him, and now look, one of the great stories of the NFL season. On top of that, Murray's been healthy. Past few years, he's gotten banged up, and
right.
He's, I think, not Murray probably like a game's worth of carries away from eclipsing the number of carries he had last season. So, I don't know when the light bulb went off in Jason Garrett's head or whatever, but you can run the ball, and Tony Romo doesn't have to make mistakes or try and win games by himself. Clearly an effective elixir down in Dallas.
Yeah, the interesting thing is about their defense, you'd think that with Sean Lee going out due to injury and then DeMarcus Ware going to Denver, and those were the two foundations, really, of that front seven. And the defense, though, now is playing a lot better than they did last year when they had an abysmal season on defense. And then they lose, really, their best 2 starters, and they play even better. So what do you think? Chemistry or something going on there?
I think so, and apparently someone's taking the personnel decisions out of Jerry Jones' hands, because a lot of these guys, a lot of, we'll call it, for lack of a better term, no-name defense, have really stepped up. Even their secondary, they spent a ton of money the last few years to size it up, and guys I don't even recall. I couldn't even tell you their names. Step big. And look, the Seahawks win was definitely impressive. I know they've come back down to earth and they're really struggling, but
right.
The win in Seattle was great. And then you look at a game like the Giants, where in any given year, I don't care what the records are, the Giants and Cowboys play each other tough in each other's buildings, and they did not blow a game that traditionally they probably would have blown. They held them off and put them away when they needed to. So, you've got to be impressive. I know we're only barely at the halfway mark. There's a lot of football to be played. I don't know, Tony Romo in December don't mix that well, but at the same time, this is a team everyone was talking about being in the The running for the top pick in the NFL draft in 2015. Now look, the Eagles are chasing them.
Yeah, and that's one thing on the very first show we did this year. We threw out the question, because they've got these 3 straight 8-8 seasons going, and setting the over-under at 7.5. Would they even reach that level of 8 again this year? And we both pretty much agreed they wouldn't. And yet, here they are, somehow, out of the blue. Who knows? They're not even at 8 yet. So they could go on an epic Cowboys collapse and not reach that 8 plateau, but it certainly looks like they're about there now.
Yeah, and let's not forget, we've seen it happen with so many teams, the Giants included. They have not really been beset by injuries. They are an injury away, like most teams are, to a key player, to the wheels coming off. So, like we say, it's a war of attrition. The healthiest team and the hottest team end up going into January with the best shot.
Yep, and then, even healthy teams with all their personnel. But one thing is they talk about, and this has become a buzzword if you look at the 4-letter network, as they call it, and that is situational football. And when you look at teams dealing with personnel changes, injuries, you got to give it up for the New England Patriots. One thing is, how in the world did they win that game last week? I'm wondering if that's about the Patriots or about just the dogged determination the Jets have to lose a game no matter what. I'll just throw some stats out here at you. The Patriots only had the ball 19 minutes and change. So the Jets had 40 minutes more of possession. The Jets had 100 more in total yardage. The Jets rushed for over 200 yards, and the Jets did not commit any turnovers, yet they lost that game. How's that even possible?
Yeah, and I mean, Chris Ivory ran all over the Patriots.
Right.
It was ridiculous. At the end of the day, the Jets just did not get the ball in the end zone, and they didn't get the stops when they needed to. And the Patriots had a big lead, and they almost blew it late in the fourth. But at the end of the day, when you're in the red zone, and I hope I'm not violating any NFL trademarks there, you have to score. You can't be relying on the 3-pointer. And then at the end of the game, you're stuck with Nick Folk with a 58-yarder, which is not a chip shot. He has to kind of boom it low, and it's blocked. So, kudos to the Jets, and they played hard. Geno Smith had a very un-Geno Smith-like game. He didn't turn it over. He made some key passes. And now they've got Percy Harvin, so who knows? I don't think they'll contend. Hopefully Harvin won't be a distraction in the locker room like he was in Seattle, but maybe it's a turning point for them, playing the Patriots tough up there in Foxborough. Maybe they try and salvage their season somehow.
It could be, and we'll have to see if maybe. I wonder how long it's going to be before Percy Harvin and Geno Smith are rumbling in the locker room. We never know. But you know what? Let's switch to another team here when we talk about teams with a fragile psyche. Now, you watched my Dolphins last week. Tannehill comes out, completes his first 14 passes of the game, throwing to 6 different receivers. They just run roughshod over the Bears, who haven't won at home so far this year. And then afterwards, Brandon Marshall, he said, and the coach said he didn't actually call out quarterback Jay Cutler, but when he says, I'm ready to play big, and Martellus Bennett's ready to play big, and the other receiver, I can't remember the other big receiver they have, we're all ready to do it. So he mentions all the receivers being ready to make big plays, but leaves Cutler out of the equation. So what does that say to you there, Mr. Lardieri?
I've taken a crash course in Brandon Marshall speak, and he's calling out his quarterback.
Okay.
Yeah, just had to decipher it. Took a little while.
Okay, all right. And you know what? I like this, and I'm not saying that just because I'm a Dolphins fan, but I look at the Dolphins now, and going back to before their bye week, played a good game against Oakland, played a good game against the Green Bay, even though they lost. Now they played a good game against Chicago. So possibly the Dolphins getting on a little bit of a roll. Now they got a soft, what I'd call a trap game against Jacksonville this week, and then they've got Detroit the week after that.
Yeah, and we toot our own horn. We both said this is a team that had a legit shot at a wild card, and you look at that division, even with the struggles the Patriots have had, the Dolphins have beaten the Patriots once already, and by no means are they the invincible Patriots of old. So they do get on a bit of a roll here, and this week the schedule's favorable to them. Who knows? And Tannehill's really kind of quietly been having a solid season. Like you said, the 14 completions. He's managing the game well. He's making the passes when he needs to. And when no Sean Moreno goes down, you get Lamar Thomas steps up. So now one more thing I want to talk about. We've kind of hit on this previously. You've got one of the most underrated defenses in football there that no one knows about. And I think you, being a Dolphin fan, need to toot Cameron Wake's horn.
Oh, yeah.
Just phenomenal. I mean, if he played in Dallas or San Francisco or Green Bay or New York, he'd probably be doing Subway commercials.
Yep, and actually they're getting Deion Jordan back this week. He was out due to PED usage, I believe it was, but he's done with his suspension, so he's coming back to the team this week. So, things are looking up for the Dolphins. We'll have to see, make sure they don't do a Cincinnati Bengals transitional point there. The Bengals, can they ever win a big game? They got crushed.
Apparently not without A.J. Green, and that's who Andy Dalton seems to key on. On top of that, their once vaunted defense has really gone into the tank.
Yeah.
They got lit up by the Panthers, who by no means are the offensive firepower that the 1980 San Diego Chargers were. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. And this season could quickly spiral out of control in a division that's fairly winnable. I know that the Ravens are playing well, but they're not the Super Bowl champion Ravens. So, really, I can't think of anything other than they must really miss A.J. Green on the offensive side of the ball. But last I checked, he's not playing defense.
Yeah, but losing 27-0 though, that's kind of. And yeah, that defense gave up over 500 yards of offense to Andrew Luck's crew. So, yeah, that's completely unacceptable looking at how good the team is, the division they're in, and what they have a chance to do.
Yeah, and let's face it, if things don't get turned around, they're going to be calling for Marvin Lewis's and Andy Dalton's head in Cincinnati, because you can't be going to the playoffs one and done. And this year they don't make it. I think there's going to be a growing sentiment for change in Cincy.
Exactly. So you know what? Let's talk about those Baltimore Ravens though, and we talk about under the radar teams. They're one. Also, I would say the same thing about the Colts, who dropped the first 2 games of the season, and then the Colts have won 5 straight. But the Ravens, they're up there now. Ravens sitting at I think they're sitting at 5-2 right now. Don't have the stats right in front of me. I believe they're 5-2. But Steve Smith sipped from the fountain of youth. Torrey Smith on the other side, and they're just lighting it up. They got the deep threats going. Who would have ever thought they would transition out of the Ray Rice era this easily?
Yeah, they clearly don't miss Ray Rice, and even on the defensive side of the ball, everyone thought there'd be a real void of leadership with the loss of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed the past few seasons. So, I think it's a good story, and they're one of those teams that I think can sneak up, given the fact that, watching Monday Night Football, I'm not all that impressed with the Steelers, and watching Cincy nosedive, and, I think the Browns are a great story, but I'm hard-pressed to think they're contenders, despite what everyone's wishing for.
Well, I'll tell you this about the Steelers. Nobody, and I mean nobody, does the last 3 minutes of the second quarter like the Pittsburgh Steelers. 24 points.
I think the Texans got whiplash. I know Bill O'Brien after the game was lamenting about that too. But and on a side note, I don't know about you, but Brown caught that touchdown in the third quarter, and they even have the divot to prove it. What more does a replay official need? I had no horse in that race, other than the fact that I picked the Steelers to win. But I don't know. He looked into me. I don't get it.
Well, the divot though. There was a little bit of white that picked up with the divot, but then again, you got to look at your momentum is going to make you at least slide a little bit when that divot comes up. So I don't know.
He's not a ballerina. He's going to drag the toes, and they're going to move.
That's true. Only Lynn Swann could have done that without taking a divot.
Very true.
Okay, and then what about Washington? Hey, the real McCoy back in town. Colt McCoy gets the start, gets the win for Washington. Now they say McCoy is going to start this week unless RG3 is medically cleared 100% to play. Then RG3 will start. So Kirk Cousins is slidden down to number 3 on the depth chart. But anyone who's waiting for RG3 to make his appearance. You don't remember how bad the offense of Washington was when RG3 was running it before he got hurt.
Yeah, they don't. Everyone was too busy talking about Kirk Cousins as the second coming of Joe Theismann, and clearly that's not the case. But yeah, it's bad when Colt McCoy, who I had no idea is still in football, is getting the start this week. So yeah, I think as bad as RG3 played, can it get any worse? I mean, at least the guy got his team to a playoff game a couple years ago. So if he's theoretically healthy, maybe the potential's there. But that's really, really an interesting story there in Washington. I'm just amazed. Cousins played real well, especially against the Eagles. And
right.
I don't know about you. What the heck happened the last couple of weeks? Did he lose his playbook?
I don't know. That's just Washington just doesn't have that great a team. And then you've got they lost Brian Orakpo now. He's out with a torn pec, so that's an all-pro linebacker out of the lineup for them. So it's just going to be tough there. And the more I think about RG3 and the way he came in, I just think. And, I could be proven wrong next season or even later this season, but really it was about a perfect storm situation. He came in when it was all about the read option, the spread offense. He came in, fit right into that. Now defenses have adjusted. And he had a rough time last year. And this year before he got hurt, it was terrible. It was sputter, 30 yards. Sputter, 20 yards. Sputter, 15 yards. Sputter, interception. That was it.
Yeah, king of the screen pass. Yeah, it'll be interesting when he does get back. At least make for some good fodder for the commentators.
Yep, definitely. So, we're about halfway through here. About to roll into the picks here in just a moment. But, let's talk about Detroit for a minute. Now, Detroit playing some pretty good ball now. What do you think of them? The Calvin Johnson era is obviously it's gonna end at some point here. Is there a possibility maybe they'd be better off without Calvin Johnson? I just look at him not being in the lineup. I don't think that it really affects Stafford's play that much. And plus, Stafford I think is free to throw the ball where he wants to and needs to. And I think when Johnson's in there, maybe he tries a little bit too hard to get the ball to Calvin Johnson, as great as Megatron is.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the last few years people have been critical of Stafford forcing the ball and interceptions.
Right.
And I know it's only been a few games, but it makes for an interesting debate, especially given how much money counts against the cap. Do you really want to pay a receiver that much? And there's already talk even in Arizona about Larry Fitzgerald may get cut unless he redoes his contract. So that's a completely valid point. And you look at the way Stafford spread the ball and rallied to beat the Saints this past week. I mean, I'm impressed with the way he's playing. Everyone's skeptical of the Lions, typical Lions, but like we said last week, they're playing great on the defensive side of the ball. And I know the Saints are a complete letdown this year, but the Saints are still the Saints on offense.
Yeah, and the Saints, that's too bad, because you had Jimmy Graham with the whole, am I a wide receiver, am I a tight end, and it really doesn't matter because you're not really making an impact anymore. So that's tough. To see the Saints go down like they have, and still only 2 wins on the year. Only teams they beat were Tampa Bay and Minnesota. And so the future just... But looking at the division they're in, the lead dog, which is the Carolina Panthers, they're sitting at 3-1. So here they are 2-5, but they're only 1 game out of first place.
Yeah, this is going to be like the 2011 NFC West. We could see a 7-9 team win the division. I don't think that's as crazy as it sounds.
Yep, definitely.
All right. I don't remember. I'm old.
Well, you know what? Then, 7-9 won the division, and then New Orleans, the defending Super Bowl champs, actually lost. Or I'm sorry, 7-9 in the that was the Cardinals went 7-9 and won the division. Is that correct?
No, the Seahawks, and they actually did beat the.
And they beat that's right, and they beat the defending Super Bowl champions in Seattle.
Yep.
Yes, I remember that.
You're thinking of the Jake Plummer Cardinals one year went 8-8, I believe, but yeah, they actually hit the Mendoza line.
Jake Plummer. Okay, don't get me started on that. That's a whole nother show. But before we get into the picks, any final football thoughts? I know you did some tequila shots with Roger Goodell last night. So how's his investigation going, and how long is it going to take before he said, you know what, I did a thorough investigation, I've determined that none of this was my fault, the end?
Yeah, last night was my wife's birthday. I love you, honey. Sorry we brought Roger over, but I figured, when at least you got to have a couple shots of Don Julio with the commissioner of the NFL. How many people can say that? Who takes care of you? But anyway, I'm tired of talking about injuries. There have been plenty of them. The mainstream media doesn't seem to care about it. One thing I noticed as we transitioned to our pick segment, I was sitting there looking through my picks, and I realized either I'm just really bad and mediocre at making picks, or this is a great public service announcement for the youth of America. Don't gamble on NFL games, boys and girls. It's extremely impossible to pick. You look at the Browns one week, beat the Steelers, and then lose to the Jaguars. I mean, you get some of these games where they actually, Vegas is so accurate, they're covering by half a point or they're pushing, which means it ended in a tie.
Right.
I'm really just amazed at how anyone could try and make a living or even try and make a few bucks doing this. Each year we say, oh, it's wide open and there's a lot of parity, but I don't even know if up is down and down is up anymore, and you can't even blame that on the injuries. I just think the league is either, other than a few outlier teams, just so mediocre, or if the fact that there have been so many injuries that no one can really forecast if these players who are coming in from the bench to start are really good. It's just too hard to predict.
Well, right, and that's the thing, is there's so many injuries, and when you look at Atlanta, their real problem is basically their entire offensive line was toast from the third game in. That's what's going on there, and then you have all the little injuries, guys going out, and this week there were 4 more players who went out due to injury or done for the season. So, yeah, you got to keep on top of that, and I know people do that for fantasy football, but that's not the real reason that you need to. So these guys' careers are on the line here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty. I play fantasy football, but, I heard C.J. Spiller broke his collarbone and was out for the year. My number 1 pick overall, Adrian Peterson, decided to beat his kid with a stick and thought it was okay. The list goes on and on. Victor Cruz gets hurt jumping and not even really landing in a way that you would think would tear his knee.
Remember, Fred Jackson's out, too, so Buffalo lost both their running backs in that game.
Yeah, so we're going to be on Bryce Brown alert. Remember, he filled in for Shady McCoy a few years ago at the Eagles. I lost track of him, so it's good to see he's getting some work. But yeah, I mean, it's impossible whether you play fantasy or gamble. I mean, I can't keep track. I was thinking about it, Charles. We're in the wrong segment of the NFL media. We should have really gone to like injury reports or fantasy football, like a lot of these waiver wire shows.
Yeah, I know.
It's like it's all, it's like I don't know. I guess it's like the I really don't know. Is it like the TSA workers? It's a necessary evil or what? But is it really anything substantial? I don't know. But it's I just sit there and I scratch my head on Sunday. I thought the 49ers would play the Broncos tougher, and apparently the 49ers were left behind in San Francisco and sent some crash test dummies or stunt doubles in their place, along with Colin Kaepernick.
So they left their hearts in San Francisco? Is that what you're...
Yeah, it's Tony Bennett, yeah.
That's bad. Okay. All right, so let's get into the pick segment here.
Please.
So, there we go. Last week, we had the extra game in there to do that makeup for that tie game between Carolina and Cincinnati. So, hey, Chris, you dipped a little bit below that said Mendoza line there at 3-4.
Only the best for me.
Okay, so over the season, and this speaks to what you just said. I'm at 21-21. You're at 20-22. So, I really don't have bragging rights. So we'll go ahead and get into the games of this week. First one, the Chargers, coming off the loss to Kansas City. Chargers, this is the Thursday night game in Denver to take on the Broncos and record-breaking, record-setting quarterback Peyton Manning. Chargers, this will be a good game here. You know what? I'm actually going with the visiting team here. I don't think the Chargers are going to drop 2 in a row. This will be a good game. I like the Chargers to go in there, get it done in the mile-high air, and bring Peyton down maybe a notch or two. What do you think, Mr. Lardier? Do you stand with me? Do we stand united on this?
Of course not. That's why we're so mediocre. No, I'm going with the Broncos. You know, I remember last year the Chargers played a phenomenal game up there in Denver late in the year and squeezed out a victory, played them tough in the playoffs. I do not think John Fox will let this team, even on a short week, forget that. I think he'll have them prepared. I don't think they'll light up the Chargers like they did the 49ers, but
yeah.
You know, for a Thursday night game, we've gotten a couple good games here in a row, and I hope this bucks the trend and is more like this past week's, and at least a competitive, close game down to the wire. But I'm going to go with the Broncos. Wasn't that impressed with Phillip Rivers? I think the Chiefs schemed well against him, and I think Jack Del Rio on the defensive side of the ball will do the same.
All right. Well, we'll see. And you know what? You can break down the next game here, which is the Rams at 2-4. Rams just took down the Seahawks, and we should have given props to Jeff Fisher when we opened. But with the gutsiest play calling I've seen in years, Rams 2-4 in Kansas City to take on the 3-3 Chiefs. Break it down for me, homie.
Yeah, it was a great play. Pete Carroll, in his infinite wisdom, thought that Austin had called for a fair catch when he really hadn't, and he confused everyone right down to the cameraman and the Rams play-by-play man, who claimed that he threw a Frank Wycheck like lateral across the field, and that never happened. But anyway, this is the Battle of Missouri. Had the St. Louis Cardinals won the pennant, we could have had a double dip of the Cardinals and Royals playing on one side of the parking lot, and the Chiefs and the Rams playing on the other at Arrowhead.
Yeah.
I like the way the Chiefs played last week. Alex Smith, who I'm pretty much cynical on, not very bullish to use that term, played a good game and drove the Chiefs to victory. Impressive win by the Rams against the Seahawks, but Arrowhead's a tough place to play. I think Andy Reid might have his team on the right foot. Jamal Charles is running into Chargers in the end zone, and it looked like he was going to suffer a concussion. He knocked the poor guy out. I think he looks in mid-season form. I'm going with the Chiefs.
Yeah, and you know what? I think this is a game. If this game was in St. Louis, if the Rams were at home, I would go ahead with the Rams in this game. But I think with the whole thing of the intimidation of Arrowhead, which is actually the loudest stadium now because they set that decibel record earlier this year. But I think for Austin Davis, who I think is going to be a good NFL quarterback here, a little too much for him at this point. I look for the Rams to play tough, but under those conditions, I don't think they can pull out this game. I'm going to go with the Chiefs as well here.
All right, it's about time we agree.
Okay, so now we've got the fragile psyche of the Bears, who are at 3-4 on the road, where all their victories have come this year, in New England to take on the Patriots. Patriots banged up, sitting at 5-2, but then again the Bears are banged up a little bit here too. So this is one of those games. The way I see it, you've got two teams, neither one really at full capacity. The championship team is playing at home. The Bears, which have never been able to get over the hump at any point really during the Jay Cutler era, going into the Patriots with what just happened against Miami. I don't see the Bears as a resilient enough team to use this game to pick themselves up. I got the Patriots here winning against the Bears.
I agree, and on top of that, we're facing a potential journalist delight and a near mutiny in the Chicago locker room. Clearly they have no faith in Cutler. Can't say I blame them. And on top of that, the Patriots are getting the 10 days off after playing on a Thursday night. Revis Island will cover either Jeffrey or Marshall. I think that will negate one of those two. And, it might be closer than we think. I think the Bears will probably show up and attempt to put up a good fight. But at the end of the day, will Jay Cutler make the plays? No. Will Tom Brady? Yes. I'm going Patriots.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, so then the defending champion Seahawks going on the road to Carolina. Seahawks at 3-3. The Panthers sitting at 3-1. Go ahead and break this one down for us, man.
The Seahawks, after week one, everyone thought they were going to go 16-0, greatest team ever, no-brainer repeat, buck the trend, and here we are at 3-3. And, not to toot my own horn, but yours truly said, don't be surprised if the 49ers give them a run for it in the division this year. And now the trade of Percy Harvin, who apparently was beating up a lot of his teammates on the offensive side and or opting out of games. Would that help the team? I mean, Russell Wilson didn't miss a beat. He and Doug Baldwin had a nice game Sunday, but still wasn't enough. I think the defense really misses Bobby Wagner. However, even though they're on the road and having to travel to the East Coast, I think they'll find themselves a team to feast on in the Carolina Panthers, having trouble on both sides of the ball. I think this is just the game they need, and maybe a little closer than it should be, but at the end of the day, I'll take the Seahawks over the Panthers. I just don't believe in the Panthers. Like we've been hitting on week after week, no offensive weapons, a revolving door, running back by committee, and Cam Newton can't do it all by himself.
Yep, that's true. And, I really think that Carolinas have a little bit of whatever disease the Cincinnati Bengals have. I just think it was just so ironic that they would play the Bengals and it would wind up in a tie. That just says it all. That is just the hockey gods at their finest moment.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm going with the Seahawks as well. They'll get everything righted here, and when you look at the Seahawks at 3-3 and looking at their schedule and everything, they can't afford to really drop a whole lot more games. It's one thing with the Panthers, who, like we talked about, a sub 500 record might get you that division. You still get in the playoffs, but the Seahawks have got to really pull it together here and start playing some good ball. So I'm going to take the Seahawks.
Yeah, and I think they got to play the 49ers and the Cardinals late here. So it does not get any easier.
Exactly. And now the Colts, Indianapolis Colts, 5 straight wins, sitting at 5-2 in Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Steelers at 4-3. Steelers trying to get right and get that Steelers swag back. Andrew Luck going in there, Big Ben on the other side. It's kind of a no-brainer here to pick the Colts to win this game. But you know what? I'm picking the Colts to win this game. They're the better team, even though the game is in Pittsburgh and the Colts are used to playing in the cozy indoor confines of their arena. I'm going to take the Colts here. I think that Andrew Luck is a little too much for them. The Colts are more together than the Steelers right now. That'll be the difference. I look for a good game, but I got the Colts winning this game.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. Normally the Colts aren't that great of a road team, but watching the way they played the last few weeks, I mean, Andrew Luck's been on fire. The defense, which no one believed in, has really been playing well. Look at Vontae Davis is now becoming a household name. And even running the ball, Ahmad Bradshaw's been doing well.
Yeah.
Luck's been spreading the ball around. The offensive line's held up. On top of that, I'm just not that impressed with the Steelers. You're already starting to hear again the rumblings coming out of Steel City as Roethlisberger having issues with Todd Haley, and that's never a good sign.
Yeah.
So, the fact that the mighty Ryan Fitzpatrick manages to score some points on the Steelers defense doesn't make me too optimistic. I think Luck will feast on them, and the Colts will continue to roll along.
Yep, and I agree with you there. So just one last game to break down, and that is the pair of 5-1 teams, NFC East against NFC West. The 5-1 Philadelphia Eagles going into AZ to take on the 5-1 Cardinals. We'll find out, these Cardinals for real, are the Eagles for real? Break it down for us, man.
The Battle of the Birds, the rematch of the championship game. My gut tells me to pick the Eagles, but I just know from recent history they don't seem to go into that building in Glendale, which is a beautiful stadium, by the way, as you and I can attest, and they don't seem to play too well against the Cardinals. I know they're coming off a bye week and everything, and Shady McCoy and Darren Sproles will be rested up, but for some reason I just think Arizona could be one of those teams where this is their year. In previous Cardinals teams that were pretenders probably would have gone to Oakland last week and choked that game away, and they didn't. When Andre Ellington isn't playing well, Stephen Taylor steps up and does well. Carson Palmer is doing just enough to win, and despite all the injuries, the defense hangs in there. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals. I'm starting to think they're for real, and unlike last year, at the very least, I think they've got wild card in their future.
Yep, and a little bit of a homecoming there for Nick Foles too, because he went to played at the University of Arizona. I know that's the one in Tucson, not Arizona State, which is actually in Phoenix, but in the same state anyways. But I'm going to go with the. What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, when I went to the game, I met a brother and sister who drive up from Tucson. They have season tickets, so it's not as far as you think. It's a dry heat too. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm sure that he'll have legions of friends and family in the stands there. But as much as Nick Foles wants this game, I'm going to have to go with the Arizona Cardinals too. In fact, they've passed every test so far this year, and the only game they lost was when they were down to really the third-string quarterback against the Denver Broncos. So, and they were in that game all the way up until the fourth quarter. So really, I'm going to go with the Cardinals because they've passed every test, and I think if and when they win this game, then this will truly put them on the map. This is the game for the Cardinals right here, to really establish themselves as not a smoke and mirrors team, is to take care of business against the Eagles at home. So I got the Cardinals to win this one.
All right, we agree. I like your line of thinking, and I look forward to another, 3-3 week for both of us.
Yeah, exactly. So before we sign off, any final words for everybody there?
I just listening to what's going on in the media, it appears that everyone's focused on college football and this playoff and the controversy and the people that vote, and now Archie Manning can't be on it. And it just struck me, there's really no controversy to talk about in the NFL right now. You can't blame the refs. We can't complain about replay too much. Everyone seems to be behaving. There haven't been an arrest. Roger Goodell's come back into hiding. So, I guess now for the next few weeks we'll be in a quiet period where we focus on some football, or maybe the coaching hot seat heats up. If the Jets keep losing, the vultures will start circling Rex Ryan in New York. So, those are some of the storylines I'm keeping my eye on. And like we hit on earlier, are the Cowboys for real? I think that's going to be a very interesting story going forward. But as we hit the halfway point of the season, I know we've made our picks in August. I'm still going to stick with them, but I still have no idea who's going to the Super Bowl. Week by week, you think the Patriots are done, they come back. You think the Browns are going to make a run, they stink it up. You think the Steelers might turn the corner, they don't. The Dolphins, are they for real or not? And,
right.
I really can't remember a year where week by week it's just so up and down. But I will say this, given all the injuries and the way they've been playing lately, it looks like it's going to be another rough year for my Giants. They're going to miss Victor Cruz, and everyone talks about the injuries and Rashad Jennings, but that defensive side of the ball is atrocious. So, I think that's going to be another thing to keep your eye on in New York. Will this be Tom Coughlin's last year?
The coffin for Coughlin.
I think you should write for the New York Post.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So, you know what? Thanks for listening again. Remember, every single week we do NFL football talk right here, so make sure you tune in and follow Chris on Twitter at Chris L Sports. You can follow yours truly on Twitter at The Inside Sports. So for Chris Lardieri, I'm Charles E. Smith Jr., and thanks for watching.